Hello and welcome to episode 56 of Off the Bandstand. My name is Christian Wiggs. I am your host. Today's episode is Sean Michael Giddings, a pianist, guitarist, singer, composer, and producer residing here in Austin. Sean tours with notable musicians Christopher Cross, Pat Green, and Eric Johnson, and has appeared on recordings with Tanya Tucker, Chris Christopherson, Houndmouth, and Donald Fagen. Sean also co-produced new Austinite Aubrey Logan's 2021 record Standard, which debuted on iTunes at #1 on the jazz charts. In this episode, we talk about Sean's process in writing for a myriad different styles. We also talk about the unique advantages for both producing his own projects and collaborators, and the end of a tour where drinks went from being on the house to on the pavement. Moving on to the release of the week, this is Sean's debut jazz album, Red Willow, a fresh new release from June of this year, and this record features longtime collaborators and familiar Austin faces, Sam Pankey on bass and Daniel Dufour on drums. Sean wore nearly every hat on this project, where he composed, produced, mixed, and mastered the entire album from his home studio, which is appropriately titled Red Willow Studios. If you want to support this release directly, you can go over to Sean's Bandcamp, which is seanmichaelgiddings.bandcamp.com. And for more information on Sean and all of his projects, you can head over to seanmichaelgiddings.com. And for all things Sean, all the time, you can follow him on Instagram, which is @SeanMGiddings. Now moving on to the Monk shows of the week, the two that we want to plug are Susanna Sharp's Brazil Night, that's going to be on Sunday, September 26th, and the Rique Pantoja Quintet, which is going to be on Thursday, September 30th. Tickets are available for the limited in-person audience at monksjazzclub.com, and as always, every show will be live streamed with links to donate in the top right-hand corner of the screen. That is it for all of the plugs this week and all of the Monk shows. Let's dive right into episode 56, Sean Michael Giddings. This is Off the Bandstand. In the past couple of weeks, David Mescatique is, I know he's like taken some lessons from you in the past, or at least
such a jerk.
Oh, is he? Oh.
I told you I was going to rage though right off the bat. Yeah, no, I love David.
Yeah, man, he just talks so much about kind of your proficiency in the Vince Guaraldi vibe, and just like always, showers you with compliments behind your back. To your face, he'll talk a lot of mess, but showers you with compliments behind your back. And I think a lot of us talk about how much we love certain musicians, and we'll be like, oh, they're super killing, or we know that certain people listen to certain individuals. But I would love to hear like directly from you, like what kind of that Vince Guaraldi vibe, or like Brad Mehldau or Keith Jarrett, like where you take those inspirations and where they started to make their way into your sound.
Yeah, I mean, that's three big ones for sure. I grew up listening to a lot of blues, a lot of different kinds of music, blues and a steady diet of James Taylor and Billy Joel, and nice. I'm kind of all over the map. But as far as the jazz guys, for sure, Bill Evans, Fred Hirsch, Brad Mehldau is kind of the ultimate for me. But yeah, there's something about the touch with those guys that's just, it's not threatening. It's just kind of very easy to accept. With Mehldau, like all that, the language that he's using is so kind of beyond comprehension, but it's still so beautiful because of how he approaches the instrument.
Yeah.
And so I try to, approach it with kind of a certain gentleness. Mm-hmm. For me, the first like exposure to jazz trio stuff was on like watching Mr. Rogers.
Oh, really? Okay.
The John Costas killing trio just right off of the shot, while he's doing the show, and again, just beautiful music. And I don't know, my aesthetic tends to be more kind of serene and kind of beautiful, rather than more aggressive. And I don't know why.
Fair enough. Did like Bill Evans come into play on any of that kind of?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Grew up listening to tons of Bill Evans trio and the duo records with Jim Hall, and my dad's a guitar player, so
okay.
My early upbringing was classical classical piano.
Yeah.
And then that turned into learning standards. I was like, I don't know, like 7 or 8 when I started playing jazz.
Oh,
and
whoa,
my
okay.
dad and I would play at nursing homes. We would do
so nice.
duo set at nursing homes all through Kansas City, where I'm from. And so it was like a lot of learn the USO, like early 20s, 30s, standards, and then go out and talk to the residents and see what their favorite songs were, and come back and learn that crop of tunes. And I was just talking with Mitch Watkins actually the other night, because he does a lot of gigs with Diane at nursing homes, and he said the same thing, which is you go and you learn tunes, and then inevitably those people are not always there when you return, but you still play the tunes, and it's kind of like a way of kind of carrying their thing forward. But so I just learned a ton of standards really young, when I think it's easier to remember stuff early on too. So I mean, by 12 or 13, I knew hundreds of tunes.
Can I tell me about your upbringing, and then, because you did tell me about that, just like with your dad and you. What age was that? 7 or 8 when you were playing at those places?
Yeah, I started gigging pretty early. I think it was like 3rd grade.
Yeah,
whatever that is, 8 or 9.
Was there any sort of nervousness or anything like that getting out there, or was it just kind of nipped in the bud by you starting so early?
No, I've never been really nervous to perform at all. I get nervous about a lot of other stuff.
Sure.
Like, whatever. But no, performance anxiety is not a thing. My dad, admittedly, is extremely anxious as a performer. So, like, that was always kind of funny, because I could tell, like, even young, he was going, But, he's hilarious, and he's such a beautiful player. He's got, to this day, he's got my favorite touch of anyone on a guitar. And I think that was, like, such a deep part of where I learned how to approach an instrument. Also, a weird thing, I fell asleep listening to solo Bach violin partitas and sonatas every night until I was like 15 years old.
Whoa,
so that's like in there for sure. And again, beautiful. Sergio Luco is the performer on this CD, and just like an amazing touch. So I'm like all about touch. It really is what it always comes back to.
Sure, yeah. How early did you sort of, because a lot of musicians will say, like, okay, like, we focus on the proficient technical side of things, but then we kind of go to another place. How much of a balance, when you're performing, do you like to go to your own kind of like imaginary pocket location, as opposed to kind of being cognizant of the audience and being aware? Because that is a balance, right? To be able to serve them and not only be self-serving, but we want to make sure that we are feeling things genuinely ourselves first. Otherwise, it will not translate to the audience, and they'll just hear notes and rhythms. Totally.
It's an excellent point, too. Yeah. It's something I'm always thinking about with any project and any genre of music, is preserving the artist integrity and doing something that, makes me excited and hopefully makes whoever's playing with me excited. But yeah, number one is the people are there to hear you. Yeah. They're supporting you financially. They're supporting you with their time. It's really important to consider them. Yeah. And I have been an audience member when I haven't felt considered before, where I've felt like it was very much about what was happening on the stage. And while that's, technically really can be really inspiring, I'm like, I got to go home and practice. It does leave you feeling like wanting something emotional, Yeah. And I'm a big crier. I love, to open up, and I kind of want that. I want to touch people with whatever, music I'm putting forth.
Yeah, man, I could not agree more with the whole, like, I'm a big crier. Like, I find myself, and man, we need to have it be a thing where everybody takes a shot anytime I mention Bo Burnham or Kurt Elling on the show, because I mention both of them a lot, which I know is two totally different sides of things.
God, that new Bo Burnham documentary was crazy.
Oh, it's so good,
so
man.
Good.
Yeah, but
super vulnerable.
Right. I mean, without fail, every time I see the last part of Make Happy, his second to last one. I don't know if you saw that one.
I don't know if I did.
It was the last one before he quit doing stand-up.
I don't remember seeing that one.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it on the show, so I'll very briefly just like recap. But quit because he was having panic attacks on stage, like in the middle of his show, but everything is planned down to like the word and the gesture in his show. So he's having these panic attacks and having to like just continue on through, and nobody even knows because he's just the consummate professional. But, you know, I cry every time at the end because he does this thing where he says, you know, he went to the Kanye West recent tour where he had auto-tune on his voice, did all this stuff, and then he does the same thing and does this whole auto-tune thing and talks about his problems, like as a white guy that's like, you know, the Chipotle guy wraps the burrito too big and everything spills out, and he doesn't want to eat a burrito with a fork, and like he can't fit his hand inside a Pringle can. He wants to have a daughter, so he finally has someone in the house that has their hand small enough that can fit inside a Pringle can. And then like he breaks it all down, and it goes down to like one spotlight, and he says, you know, I can sit here and pretend like my biggest problems are Pringle cans and burritos, and then addresses the audience and says, but my biggest problem's you. I want to please you, but I want to stay true to myself. I want to give you the night out that you deserve, but I want to say what I think and not care what you think about it. A part of me loves you, a part of me hates you, a part of me needs you, a part of me fears you. I don't think that I can handle this right now.
Man.
And it just, I think as a performer, again, I've said this before, but we do live a very privileged life that we're able to make music and pay our bills that way and focus entirely on it. But sometimes I think that the idea of being a performer can be parasitic in both ways, back and forth. But especially because like an audience comes in and they're just taking what you're giving, and you're not necessarily until the end of the tune with the clapping, you're not really getting that feedback necessarily. You're experiencing something together, so that's filling you back up in your joy quota, but you're not really getting that affirmation in real time. You're just like, oh, I hope that they like this, and I hope that I'm not taking 2 choruses too many, you know, or something like that on a tune. And so this idea, the reason why I talk about Bo all the time is this idea of like bringing to light the validity of the feelings and emotions of artists, and saying that it's not just like we have it all together, we're like, oh cool, we're playing music for you. Like it's a very vulnerable thing, you know. And so when you were saying like I'm a big crier, and you know I like to like express that emotion through the instrument, I think that's the most honest way of approaching the music, and it certainly comes through, especially on this new record, man. Like
thanks.
In the Light of the Unfinished Moon just like makes me weep. You know, it's just such a beautiful. I would love to ask you, because I mean, titles are everything to me. What is that title referring to?
That one is basically random. I just needed a title for a ballad.
Okay.
But it's funny, I played that cut the other night for Mitch when we were hanging out, and he was like, oh yeah, it's that Beatles. And I don't really know the Beatles, but he's like, yeah, that's that Beatles tune. And he played it, and I'm like, fuck, you know, it's just impossible to not steal something.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, totally. And I've never heard the song, but it was like exactly that. You know, with diatonic music,
yeah, sure.
It's which that tune begins as pretty, you know, right up the middle diatonic.
Yeah.
It's like almost impossible to do something original. But that being said, yes, I've always been drawn to ballads. I love playing ballads. I've been kicking around the idea of doing a ballads record for a lot of years, but it's also like that's such a mood, you know.
Yeah.
But I want to do it.
Yeah,
I definitely want to do it. The title for that, is random. It means nothing.
Well, another title that stuck out to me, and kind of in that same vein of something that feels very meaningful and feels kind of loaded a little bit, is the tune Questioning. Was that anything specific? Was the word questioning referring to anything specific behind any sort of narrative or theme?
That tune just kind of sounds... it just kind of sounds suspicious. Okay. So it's not, I wish it was like a deeper thing, but sure. It's, you know, of course we all have questions, but I think that, you know, maybe at the end of that song, it's kind of like everyone in the trio, I guess we should talk. So it's Sam Pankey on bass, Daniel Dufour on drums, who basically when I hit Austin in 2014 were 2 of the first guys I was playing with. And they've become, I mean, family to me. Yeah. And we've played together, you know, regularly for a long time. There's a ton of trust. There's no fear. There's no ego. It's just super easy. And I've always, you know, wanted that. Ever since hearing the trio records that inspired me, and you can hear that, like, you know, Bill Evans, Scott LaFaro, the Paul Motion, like that, you know, that hookup, and then the Meldau trio. Anyway, so finding collaborators like that is kind of everything for me. Yeah. And then from there, it's just, throw charts up. Like for making this record, the guys had never seen any of this music until the session. And we recorded it in my living room in basically 3 hours, the whole record. And the next day I added some synth programming, some strings, some like random stuff, mixed it, mastered it, and that was it. So it was a 2-day record.
Do you...
Yeah, just real quick.
People are going to be upset. They're going to go, what? Like, he probably labored over this for so long? Man, do you like to do a lot of those where they're just very off the cuff?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think there's a place for everything, and I've definitely, Charlie can attest, I've been working on a pop record for like almost 2 years. And I'm totally ready to get it out and into the world. But it's a little different, I think, especially like part-driven music, pop being more like meticulously thought out parts, jazz having a lot more room to be spontaneous, to improvise, but mostly I try not to be precious with anything, because I think it's more about capturing kind of the first instinct from great players. I do a lot of session work, and I'm super grateful for the work. But what I find a lot of times from clients that maybe aren't as experienced, and they call me for, put piano or put keys on something. I guess I am going to talk some crap now.
No,
it's just it's not intentional, but it's for the bigger. Get ragey. They kind of try to micromanage what I do, and I'm certainly all about pleasing a client and all about trying to do the job the way that they want. But when I hire sidemen or when I reach out to people, I say, here's the song, and then I wait to get their track back. Yeah. And that's it, because you call people to do what they do best. And I think the best results in anything in life, if you're collaborating, are know who to call for what job and what reason, and then let them be, you know? And it might be totally different than what your preconception is or what you think is going to come back, but it's always better. Yeah, it's always better. And this record was no different. They're all that way.
I completely agree. I mean, he is in the room, but I even if he wasn't in the room, I would shower him with compliments. Is like, I can't imagine making the past couple or the next few, records without Charlie. And I always tell him, I go like, okay, here's what I'm hearing, but at the same time, like, I send him copious amounts of notes and stuff like that of like, here are things that I'm hearing, but I put a disclaimer at like every third line. If you don't think this is right, you just don't do it. This is what I think I'm hearing, but ultimately I'm going to defer to your judgment. And I feel the exact same way about, I think sometimes people see that as a cop-out, like Fabio Augustinus plays on...
He plays great.
Plays with all of my stuff. And on this last record, some people might say, oh, it's lazy not to like have everything written out and have everything already all good to go. So whenever people walk in the room, it's like play exactly the ink. But at the same time, I realize that I'm a vocalist with very little, ultimately very little harmonic vocabulary in the grand scheme of things. And I don't want to limit them based on the limitations of my own imagination. So I'd rather say, here's what I would like to go for. We're talking about that colors, what was it called? Synesthesia.
Synesthesia, yeah.
Here's the colors that I want, and even more so what I try to do, you asked me if I'm a big movie guy, I am. It was either going to be music or movies. I always like to give them this idea of like, if this was a scene, this is what's playing out. And be able to give a very specific narrative so that way they can channel even like the character and what that character would be doing if they're making that music. But Charlie is just so amazing at like you said, taking whatever I thought would be good and making it immediately better. And I like that approach of making records that way, that it's just a snapshot, because it does start to get watered down and contrived the more that we try to micromanage every little thing.
It loses some of the magic. And yes, to your point, Charlie is a master.
Yeah.
And if it's from an engineering side where you've got the cans on, you're playing something that he's tracking, already sounds great hitting the mics.
Yeah.
From a mixing standpoint, he mixed my whole pop record, and it was like, it's like mind reading, It's like, and then doing something even that sounds so much better than what I imagined it would sound. Yeah. So and just such a cool guy too. Yeah. You.
Well,
you just single tear. Oh,
this is a single tear with a specific. Amazing. Well, talking about media too. I'll ask about one more specific tune, Sebastian. People might think that you had just gotten like a Disney Plus subscription. You've been binge watching some
I had
old
not
classics.
seen Little Mermaid until like kind of recently.
Oh, really?
To be honest, yeah.
Okay.
And I did get a Disney Plus subscription during COVID.
What's your
like everybody else?
What's your character profile photo?
If I was a Disney character, who would I be?
Oh no, well, because like your profile, whenever you get a Disney Plus profile, it has like a picture. But sure, let's go with that.
I bet my wife picked one.
Who would you be?
Oh, I don't know. Probably Scar. Why was Scar my first instinct?
I don't know.
Who would you be?
I feel like the obvious answer there is Mufasa. You know, just like the yin and the yang. I don't know.
We're about to duke it out, huh?
I would probably be Remy from Ratatouille.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
It's a good one. Or like whatever, Linguini. You know, that guy.
I like that.
But yeah, no. So Sebastian, kind of that calypso vibe.
Yeah,
Where
totally.
did that come from?
It's just a rhythm changes. Again, you know, the goal with this jazz record, the pop record and the jazz record were both written entirely during COVID.
Yeah.
So it's March 2020. Everything stops. I'm used to touring a couple days a week. We're not doing that. No one's doing anything. So I had just built out my home studio and was taking the time to kind of learn how to engineer in a way that I had not dug into. So I was recording tons of covers that I had always wanted to spend time recording and
like
just
what?
Posting them on Instagram. I don't know. I was doing like indie stuff, like Tallest Man on Earth.
Oh boy.
I did like a Jackson C. Frank cover.
Okay.
Just songs that I'd wanted to do. Nick Drake. I did a Tim McGraw cover.
Okay.
Just kind of all over
Running
the
the
place.
gamut. Do you mind if I just, as a quick detour, because I just, in my big band, just did a Tallest Man tune, Where Did My Bluebird Fly?
It's great.
Because it's just unbelievable. I think Tallest Man is like,
He's great. He's great.
Christian Matson's the best. What did you do?
I did Like the Wheel,
Okay.
which is a beautiful song.
Yeah.
Do you do all your arranging for your big band, or do you?
I don't.
Yeah.
In the same vibe that we were just talking about delegating to people who are better than you. And the arranging is actually pretty spread out. It's Mescatique, Thomas Wanglinski, if you've heard Thomas, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Marco Santos, Mike Saylors, John Mills is going to write like a Steely Dan thing. Russell Haight, and then Brian Carter, that drummer, and then a couple Stephen Five-key arrangements as well. Because I just want that kind of
Collaborative,
hodgepodge,
thing.
collaborative thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Super cool.
yeah, very
Yeah.
fun. But yeah, so you said you were recording covers and you were doing all this stuff in your home studio.
I was recording covers and then realizing kind of at the same time how therapeutic these songs that I've always like just kind of deemed as really well written and beautiful songs. Again, I'm not a very like I'm the lack of aggressive. You know, I'm from the Midwest. It's just we're all passive. It's just a thing.
Sure.
So I was realizing how kind of healing these songs were for me, and the idea of trying to write some stuff from whatever genre that was just lovely and hopefully healing. Definitely healing for me and just peaceful, you know.
Yeah.
I wanted to do Fore Always Laughs at Me because I think that the line was like, I just wanted to do something really non-threatening that no one was going to be like feel like any sort of way by, you know.
Sure.
And I've said this before about the jazz record. I feel like, you know, the goal was to record and release something that people could play during dinner. Yeah. Like I know that's like the least popular kind of jazz opinion, but I just wanted it to be nice background music. Yeah. So all the songs are very much like, I was a really circuitous answer, but Sebastian is a rhythm changes, and it's just supposed to be fun and you know, just upbeat. So,
yeah, amazing. Well, speaking about those other types of media too, I know that Agafia, we had mentioned this briefly before we started rolling, but that you and your wife had started watching a lot of documentaries. Oh, yeah. And I was going to ask why, and you kind of gave me like a little bit of an answer, but yeah, like what draws you to documentaries more than anything else?
Well, I mean, my wife's always been into documentaries, and she's like, I think like, you know, so into the true crime thing, which is like such a thing, you know. Serial, and then eventually she hit a point where it's like, yeah, this is just too much, too much true crime. Let's look elsewhere. Let's branch out a little bit. So we were just going through during COVID and watching just a ton of documentaries, and this one popped up about this woman, Agafia. It's called Agafia's Siberian Tundra. Okay. And she's like 80 plus years old, living in the Arctic by herself, has spent her entire life living in the Siberian Russia, like 3 feet of snow all the time, and by yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just insane.
Yeah.
And she has dogs. I don't know where the dogs come from. She I think the thing is she flies into whatever the closest city is once a year, stocks up for, the year and yeah, it's crazy.
Stocks up on supplies or
yeah,
dogs?
maybe maybe both.
Like,
but yeah, she has, it's like she chops wood for 4 months.
Whoa.
During the non-snow parts, and then it's
Yeah.
8 months of snow that she's got to have enough wood for.
Man.
It's crazy. Yeah, so it's just kind of that song is this very kind of Russian nationalist kind of thing. Yeah.
I was going to ask if there was a specific Russian composer that you had in mind whenever doing it, or was it just more of a holistic view of the culture?
Yeah, it just ended up kind of being that vibe. I did steal the B section of that song from the New World Symphony though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, totally stole it. It's public domain, so what are they going to do?
Yeah. And honestly, it's more of an accolade to the listener if they call you out on it. It's all right.
It's hey, good for you.
I was testing.
Good
you.
ears.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you like to find inspiration for a lot of your writing? Because I know you write a ton. I mean, obviously 2 records in a year. I mean, there is that, this is maybe talking about it a little bit, but there was that Billie Eilish thing where I think she was I wrote 3 whole songs in the pandemic or something like that. And I'm going to take that back. We shouldn't patronize anybody's
Talking
process.
crap again.
I know.
What
man.
is with you
but,
today?
I don't know. It's just let's cut. Let's just try to do this.
We'll cut it out in post.
Yeah, no, but I know that you write a lot. I'm curious. Do you like to use inspiration from a bunch of other different forms of media, or do you find it from just going on a run or going on a walk? Where do you find more often than not inspiration comes from?
That's a big question. I will say that as far as my writing process, there's guys like John Prine and Randy Newman that I know, even Sturgill Simpson. These guys have offices at Stephen Barber, a great composer in town. He's brilliant. But they have offices that they will go sit at from 9 to 5. And they'll treat their writing process like a 40-hour-a-week job.
Wow, okay.
And it's I've read so many different books about songwriting, and I'm fascinated. I think someone told me one time, when you're looking, I don't know what I want to do with my life. It's so what do you notice that you do in your free time? And then that kind of can be a metric for.
Sure.
And I'm just constantly Googling writers and musicians and trying to just kind of read about their stories and their processes. I'm constantly trying to find interviews and I draw a lot of inspiration from people that, have done it for a long time in a masterful way.
Yeah.
So all that leading up to say, I am not a disciplined writer like that, where I go and sit and, I do try. I think Randy Newman was the one that said, even if you're writing something and you realize that that's garbage, finish it.
Whoa,
for the sake
yeah.
of having the discipline of seeing something all the way through.
Yeah.
So I do try to adhere to that. That's probably my most disciplined writing tenet, where I don't have any unfinished songs.
Whoa. Okay.
I have like maybe a line or two in like a notes folder, like everyone does.
Sure.
But I don't have like I just need to do another verse, another whatever bridge, and then it's done. It's like they're all done. Most of them never see the light of day.
Okay.
I throw away 5 songs for every one that comes out.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, so I'm pretty picky about, and particularly right now, I put out enough records in my past that, in retrospect, there's some filler. I think everyone that's put something out kind of can relate to that. I'm trying not to, at least by my own gauge, not have any filler on anything that I put out. So,
right.
But I'm a total like capture lightning when it strikes kind of writer. On the pop record, all of the songs were written within 30 minutes, start to finish.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah. But it was, I would write one and then I would not write anything for a month.
Sure.
So the jazz record was a lot more born out of just sitting down and improvising.
Yeah.
And like, oh, that's nice. And, pull out the phone, voice memo. So it was like kind of a whole process.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you work on multiple things at the same time?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So you said the pop record was like, kind of just banging out in 30 minutes. Are there any that take you weeks, months to finish, or do you not like to let it go that long?
I don't like to do that, but there are definitely have been songs that I will, I have like the music all the way done, and then I'll sit and tweak lyrics or something for like an insane amount of time.
Sure. That's also something I would love to talk to you about, is like lyricism, right? Like lyricism is super important to me because I feel like there's a lot of ways that it can be done, like where they feel contrived, or it's like a cheap rhyme scheme or something like that.
Do you write a lot?
I do.
Yeah.
And it was something that I didn't plan on doing. I just knew there was one thing that I wanted to get out, and something that I was like, oh, I feel good about this. Like, I actually was thinking about this the other day, that I remember the first, like, I don't remember the first set of lyrics, but I remember one part of, I was writing like lyrics to Tenor Madness when I was like 17.
Oh yeah, you were.
Gross. It's like, I almost regret saying that on camera. And like,
it's here forever now.
The words, I'm already incriminating myself.
Can we pull that up?
The words, yeah.
You have that?
You're like, it's like, we actually found these voice memos from Christian's like childhood hard drive. The words John Coltrane made their way in, and I went, I'm not doing this ever again. And then, magnifique, chef's kiss. Just like, that salt guy that like sprinkles the salt. It's like, just sprinkle in some names here. But yeah, like I was like, I don't want to do that. And then there was just like a very specific like imagery on what ended up being the first tune of my second record. And I was like, well, maybe I'll only do this here and there. And then I felt very much for a long time, I was like, oh, I'm not a lyricist, I just write some lyrics. And Adrian Ruiz actually, like, I felt the same way about like composing, because I would not do all the harmonization too. I would like have basic harmonization. I'd go to David and I'd say, hey, spice this up. Here's what I'm feeling. And so I felt like less than a composer, less than a lyricist. And then Adrian Ruiz, I remember on one of these episodes, he goes, no, Christian, if you've written anything, you are a composer. And it was just kind of that really beautiful, like, like you're like a father type, thing. But I do like to write a lot. And I go more towards this side of things that are a little bit more beat poet, a little bit more like abstract stuff, because I just don't
lyrically.
I just don't want it to be on the nose, because my own insecurities, I haven't found a way to make it more easily palatable without being cheesy. So I stray away from that. What do you like to do with your, because I know you wrote a pop record, and like Non-Essential we heard on the Monk Show, which again, like I've watched that Monk Show more than a lot of them recently.
Oh, wow.
Like just so good.
Thanks, man.
Of course. So I'm curious, like, what lyrical inspiration do you like to pull from? What style do you like to center on?
Well, it's been a whole thing. It's been a whole process.
Yeah.
I started writing songs in college, and I was, kind of my first, I grew up listening to, like I said, to James Taylor and Elton John, like a lot of the classic, like 70s things. And so like my early recordings, which like your Tenor Madness hit will never see the light of day.
Never.
Were, very kind of not thought out, just kind of getting your feet under you.
Yeah.
And then I got so deeply into Bon Iver and Justin Vernon, like all of his projects, and I'm still a massive fan.
Yeah.
And so then a bunch of my recordings ended up being basically lyrical gibberish that sounded pretty, because at the time that's what I was pulling from Bon Iver. It was like, these words are beautiful together and I don't know what they mean.
Sure.
And I'm still kind of in that school, but it's like, Sigur Rós was another huge influence for me, which is like this Icelandic band that basically made up a language and sings in it. So it's actual gibberish.
Yeah.
But so moving, and that realization of like, you don't have to necessarily be saying something to have an emotional impact.
Yeah, interesting.
So that was like a lot of my experimenting, and then this pop record, which we keep referencing, it's not out yet, I'll clarify. It's gonna come out, I'm gonna start dropping singles this fall.
Okay.
But it was a COVID project that started as kind of a joke, because it's very like late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
Lots of like vintage piano sounds, like the kind of like real cheesy,
Sure.
but awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it ended up being really fun. So all of the songs on this record are love songs for my wife. And
Beautiful.
you know, I think that at your best, if you can pull lyrically something honest from yourself, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Speaking of vulnerability, it's really hard to open up, your most honest kind of part. But, sad, depressed songs and angsty songs, I'm like, I don't really live that. That's not organic to me. I've been really fortunate to have like a very happy life, and so the love songs was cool, and it feels right. It's when you hit that thing kind of accidentally that ends up being really organic. It was really special. It's a special project.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I every time I watch you, and especially like I remember on Agafio, one thing I was going to say earlier was like, it was like, I don't know, 40 minutes into your set, and you went, all right, I'm going to need music for this one. And then there's about a 6-second period where you just hear like all this music that you didn't need. You're like, where is it? Okay, all right. All right, here we go. And as a testament to that, I mean, like, everything that you play does not feel like the piano has resistance against you, and is like, because I think we kind of get this duality sometimes of like, the instrument highlights our limitations because of how capable the instrument is itself, and then there's other things where like you hear people who just make the instrument sound like a toy, like they have like surpassed the capability of the instrument. And I think whenever I listen to you play, like, it does feel like the piano is just an extension of your body, and that like there's no part of it that any thought is having to come out of. It's just kind of like, all right, I'm going to talk in between tunes, and then like I'm going to let my body do the work, and the piano's just here to facilitate like the truest like inner form. And I think that is what we all strive for. And so not that you needed any validation from me, but like I just wanted to say that it really sounds incredible when you play. Like, it just feels so natural and so honest and so vulnerable, as we've been talking about.
Thank you. Well, I will, to that point, I will say, having a beautiful instrument to play on is a big part of the comfort level. And Colin Shook, that curates these monk shows, like, on top of having a really amazing stream and an amazing platform for local musicians, he has a beautiful piano and takes care of it. He's a beautiful, piano, maintenance technician. And so it's really inspiring to hear a nice instrument like that. Yeah.
So whenever you sit down, or like the scenario for you, like you wake up, you have that first, second, third cup of coffee. If you're like me, it's like 7. Yeah. Slowly cutting the years off of my life with every cup. But
is it bad for you?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't think so. No. It's just we've decided. Yeah, scientifically.
You don't need all your nerve endings.
You don't need all your nerve endings, right? Yeah. What good are nerve endings if you don't feel them? You know what I mean? Like whenever you kind of sit down for your first time to play, either on like an emotional, spiritual, mental, or physical level, like what goes through your mind?
Like during a day?
Yeah, just like when you sit down to play the piano, or just as you walk throughout your day, musically or otherwise.
I don't play a lot for myself unless I'm in a writing mode.
Interesting. Okay.
So I don't remember the last time I sat at my piano at home. It's been weeks, which is like really shameful. But I've never really enjoyed practicing.
Yeah.
I've never been like it's weird. I love to play music, but like I don't love to sit down and work on stuff.
Sure.
Which is why I have very limited chops. Admittedly, there's pretty much everybody that I admire in town and otherwise can just play circles around me. It's so much more technical proficiency, but I sit at my piano as a writing tool, and I've kind of been touring for quite a while now, and my relationship with the piano has kind of changed in the last few years, and for better or for worse, I can't say, but I am really, really fortunate because I have my childhood baby grand piano in my living room. It's stayed with me through these years, and it lived with a friend in Oklahoma for a while my parents had moved and didn't have room for it, and then I had moved and didn't have room for it, and so we found our way back to each other.
Oh,
and
man,
that's been nice. And that was the piano actually we recorded that record on in the living room. So
that is super special.
Yeah.
I know you said like you're I think it's fine to say a crier. I'm a crier. I think it's fine to say the word a crier.
Yeah.
For some reason, it has a negative connotation. Like in my mind, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. We're criers.
No.
There it is.
There's nothing negative about it.
Yeah. Do you feel that having that thing that ties you, that sentimental tie back to your childhood and where kind of all of this was inspired through your parents, do you feel that helps the music in any way because it's something that is tied back to the origins of your musical career?
Absolutely. I mean, my earliest memories are my dad playing guitar and as a kid playing ping pong and listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan, Texas Flood in the basement and listening to Jimmy Smith, Organ Grinder Swing. That was like another huge record for me. Kid was Kenny Burrell on guitar and, Ray Charles. That was another like always on in the house. Ray Charles. So yeah, all of these kind of components that come back and I sit at that piano and there's a lot of like early years practicing, a lot of practicing with my dad and playing and yeah, absolutely. I don't know if as a writer you've experienced where you finish something that you've like really been trying, like you really like, I'm really making an effort to do something.
Sure.
Like I want to write something in the style of Tallest Man. And then you're like, I'm going to do it. And then you do it and you're kind of like, it's kind of a hollow victory. And so, I think if you're just putting you as much as you can into it and not super worried about the results or what people will think or not being afraid to be vulnerable and put that out, even if it's not the cool thing, which is usually my mentality, like this isn't cool at all. But, I think life's not about being cool, it's about being warm. So. There it is.
Yeah. There it is, yeah. Yeah, man. I also want to ask about like the process of making records because like, again, talking about Charlie, I always say like, man, I owe you the biggest bottle of whatever you want.
We should stop talking about Charlie now. I'm done with it. Yeah, he's agreeing.
He's like, no, I don't want it. But yeah, it's weird having people in the room.
Enough on Charlie.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let's get like a curtain that just like drops. Finite. But I find that making records, especially whenever it's not something that's just a snapshot in time, right? It very can be very exhausting because for me, where I'm making a record from coming up with the arrangements to doing it, to doing all the mixing process, getting the final masters, and then releasing it, generally is about a year process for me. Maybe a year and a half in the case of this last one because I had asked for more low end and then I was like, this is way boomy, and then got another remaster and information that doesn't matter. But it is for me, all four of those points, emotional, spiritual, mental, physical, just like exhausting in all of those ways. And I need some time in between each one. I'm never stopping the process of being like, oh, I would like to do this. And like, here's a project I'd like to do in time. Here's a tune or an idea that I have. Maybe that'll go to this project. This will go to this. But a couple questions for you on that is like, how do you separate and categorize maybe into those subfolders? Do you get on one train of like writing one style of thing, or is it just like a bunch of different things and you go, I'll just slowly, boom, that's going to go into that project and this and this and this, or like things for like Pat Green? Like, how do you, is your writing process decidedly in one genre for a while and then switches to another, or is it just a mix?
It's a mix. If I'm on a project, like while I was writing the jazz record, okay, the COVID year was, I would, sit in my studio with my 80s piano patches pulled up and start trying to write parts on these 80s patches and then just laugh and go pour myself a cocktail and keep going. And that was like every day.
Yeah.
The jazz thing was like, it was late at night and I'd sit down and just kind of mess with something. But I knew that I was distinctly doing a jazz record and a pop record. If I'm writing for Pat or with Pat, that's a whole different thing. I never listened to country music growing up. I had no idea who Pat Green was when I got called for that gig. I started with Cory Morrow, actually, who's another Texas country guy. And I was not familiar with him or the genre. But through that, I started to listen to a lot of like Bruce Springsteen and a lot of Tom Petty, who all the Texas country guys kind of hold as their, their industry standard for writing and records. So there was actually like this country kind of 3/4 waltz that I had written and released on my own record that Mitch Watkins produced a few years ago. And Pat heard it and he was interested, so he cut that. And we changed the arrangement a little bit, but made it a little more country, a little less indie. And then Pat has a record coming out in the fall that I wrote several things on, and it was just more of a, I don't necessarily know how to connect with his listeners and Texas country fans, because the kind of the beauty of Texas country is saying a simple thing in just a simple enough way, but also with just the right amount of finesse, or the right clever thing. And that's actually really hard. It's really hard to hit that spot. So I struggle with that genre, but for this pop record, which I've also kind of been calling an 80s record, I've toured with Christopher Cross for a number of years, and he's a huge inspiration for me about writing, because he writes constantly. He's prolific, and he has some deep cuts that are just, to me, just some of the best songs ever written. So I was trying to kind of channel that, which is a lot more poetry centered, a lot more like, it can be really sweet and specific to like either specific memories or whatever. But to your point, the record making process, it was the first time I had done a record remotely, which I think lots of people were doing remote collaborations through 2020. But so I would sit and play the piano part to a click and get a song done, and then I would send it to Keith Carlock, who's amazing drummer, lives outside of Nashville, and he would send me tracks back, and then I would have to go back in and completely redo my piano, because Keith is like an actual metronome. And so it was what I thought was to a click, and I thought was pretty cool. It was like, no, not even close. So I would redo my piano, and then I would send it to, bass, guitar, whoever for the track I thought would be the right fit. And it was a blast. It was so low pressure, rather than I'm going to book a week at the studio and we know we have to get this done. Maybe someone's not feeling well that day. Maybe the inspiration's not there. It was like some people would take me, it would take them 6 months to get me a track back. Eric Johnson played on a couple of the tracks, which is super gracious of him. And I mean, it's like I think he had so much stuff going on that it was like at a point, what he sent me back, it was just awesome. And it was fun to have that, like, whenever you're ready, I'm here for it. So that was a really, really fulfilling record making process, and I would do it again, even post COVID. It was just fun to get people can spend time on their their parts and their performances and stuff, and it was great. And
then you also don't, I guess, in real time, you don't have people micromanaging your stuff either.
Totally, and that goes back to what we were saying earlier. I don't remember ever. I don't know. It surely didn't happen. Someone sending me something and be like, "Hey man, can you?" It was great. Everyone was just so cool and so gracious about contributing to the project.
Yeah, for sure. How do you like the producing side of things?
That's my favorite thing.
Okay,
that's my favorite thing in all of music is producing records.
Okay. How do you like producing your stuff as opposed to other people's stuff? Because there is kind of that balance, right? Where if you're producing somebody else's stuff, you have to be clear to their vision. You kind of get a framework to work within, but maybe there's more limited autonomy. But like, how do you like the balance between those two?
Yeah, you said it well. Producing my own stuff is really fun because I don't have to answer to anybody. And producing for other people is really fun because it's at its ultimate. At the best case scenario, you're trying to kind of understand that person, and I feel like most of that comes from like hanging out. The better you know somebody, that makes that relationship obviously a lot easier. And then you build that trust, and then you have more, of a place to put in your own thing. But it's very, and I guess this is sidemen centered, but the goal is to not ever force yourself onto anyone's music as a side person. It's not about you and what you have to say to someone's music. It's about serving the song and being unnoticed. The joke in Pat's band is that, to try to be the rug. You don't notice it, but it ties the room together in a nice way, And so I like being very behind the scenes and very kind of unnoticeable, especially producing people's records. I try to play very little and leave room for other things to happen. So, but yeah, to me, it's kind of the ultimate. It's the playing part, it's the writing part, the listening part, and then like the friendship, the psychology part of music.
Yeah, so. Beautiful. The one of the last things that I wanted to ask you about was the singing side of things, when that started to come into play for you.
I've been trying to sing since I was 18.
Okay.
And I still feel like I'm trying to sing. It's so hard. I have ultimate respect for, singers. So hard. And talk about vulnerable, it's like all of the hardest parts of any other instrument, plus it's your voice sounds just like you and nobody else. So yeah, it's really daunting, really daunting. But I find that the more I hear myself in playback, like listening to, I get more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But I also think a huge part of it is if you feel connected to, I don't know if you've ever had to do like cover gigs or anything where it's like you're singing songs, you're like, I hate this song. And like, that's no fun, you know? But if you're singing something that you're passionate about, what a trip. It's so fulfilling.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I always try to because I've had that, doing like wedding band stuff. You have to sing so many songs that you're just like, it's kind of a chore rather than anything else. It's when music becomes work. And in those situations, I just try to find like the smallest nugget of the song that I do like.
Oh, that's hip right there.
Yeah, I'll go like, I really love how X melody note sits in X chord. Maybe it's the only thing that I like. And then I treat my enthusiasm as like this ultimate like build towards that part. And then I go, and here's the nice part of it. It's like having like a busy day full of things and then knowing that you're going to have like a nice date night that night, that's just how I try to view that. But you were saying
that's incredibly emotionally healthy. That's really good, man.
Trying to focus on. I'm gonna
try to steal some of that from you.
More and more, yeah. Well, I mean, like this is a nature version of that, but like obviously the pandemic was a time where musicians were having this like identity crisis, for a while, just like not being on stage, not doing the thing, and just like sitting at home, and every person that you've ever heard saying like, oh, music isn't a real job became suddenly very like. It's not a valid thing for people to say. I want to be clear on that. But whenever you're not doing it, it's like, so am I just supposed to sit at home, and like not do this because this is my career? Do I totally pivot and then just like go get like a service industry job because maybe I was living in a dream or something like that? But all of that to say, there was a lot of like struggling with just like kind of mental health stuff, and I used that time to just like start running a lot, like trying to run like 5-6 miles, either in the morning or like late at night. And one thing that I would notice is sometimes I'd go on runs at like 11 p.m. and I would run past this part. Again, I live up there north, and by one of the shops, there's this like entire wall where they just like grew jasmine on the side of the concrete wall. And every time, like if I was like just exhausted, I would pass that around mile 4 of 5, and I would like look forward to that, and I'd be like, that smell is gonna like revitalize me, and I would get there, and it just felt so like rejuvenating, and then I would be like, all right, I'm gonna push through to the end now.
Cool.
It's just those kind of things that just always trying to focus on the tiniest little nugget of joy that makes something that is very labor intensive not,
It's great, man.
Yeah. So, anyways,
and with this podcast was born from COVID. I'm taking. Is that right?
It was. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to do it for several years before. just because, kind of as we were talking about before we started rolling, the idea of documentaries, of being able to know more about the people, and the podcast getting to know more about people, I have the biggest respect for everybody who is on this show. There's not a single person on here that's filler or fluff, and I want to know about what made them tick to write a certain thing, because then that inspires me and hopefully inspires others to be like, oh yeah, like it's not like this person just has it all together and they're cranking out a record and it was like super easy for them and they went to bed that night and didn't have any stress about it. Like, I just think, I don't know, the idea of like empathy and getting to know other people, and we just don't get a chance to know people whenever they're playing on stage all the time. We get to talk to them after, but usually musicians are in a certain kind of headspace and they're not ready for a full conversation because they're very exhausted. So I wanted people to be able to understand personalities, and make scenes feel less large and make it feel like more like a small community like Austin's, but try to pull in people from different scenes, you know. So all that to say, it's just a selfish project that I wanted to talk to people.
I think that's super cool. Yeah, super cool. And you know, I'm sure lots of people will be able to connect with what you're saying is we're playing all the time, but we don't get to chat as much. Like, I don't know when you and I would have gotten to have an hour conversation unplanned otherwise.
Yeah,
So this is really cool.
Without glasses breaking. And,
right.
And,
right.
Yeah. Right.
the margarita blender in the background.
The bar sounds. Yeah. Exactly. Well, let me ask you a couple quick speed round questions. The first is, if you had a record that you would go and suggest everybody listen to, it could be of any genre, it could be of any decade, but it's just required listening, that as soon as they finish it, go listen to this record, what would it be?
Ooh. That's tough. I would say, the first thing that comes to mind, and I'll just go with it, is Brad Mehldau Largo.
Yeah.
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 But there's a ton. I mean, there's a really great James Taylor live record from like the early '90s that is just one of my all-time favorites.
Okay.
Feel Good. There's tons. There's too many to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just listening like 2 days ago, re-listening to the Finding Gabriel Brad Mehldau
that's crazy.
record.
Yeah.
And then he just released like an orchestral thing like a couple months ago, right?
And then that After Bach thing that he put out is otherworldly genius.
Yeah.
I've listened to that thing dozens of times and I have no idea how he's doing any of that. Yeah, it's magic.
Were you here when, or were you at the show where he played at the Paramount and did Seymour Reads the Constitution?
I was.
Yeah.
He did Hey Joe as the encore.
Yeah.
It was tight.
Yeah. I think everybody in the scene was there. Like nobody could book a gig that night. Like no venue could book a gig that night because all the musicians were like, nope, we're taking it off. We got to go see the trio.
Jeff Ballard didn't hit, from what I remember, he didn't hit a drum until like the third song. It was just all cymbals for the first two things. It was crazy.
Man.
So much patience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the way that, just masterful.
What's your record? Required listening.
It's so funny. I always ask it, and I never expect the follow-up.
It's a hard question.
It is. Right now, I would say two. Kurt Elling's 2003 Man in the Air has John Coltrane's Resolution. It has In the Wine Light. It has Minuano, Pat Metheny's Minuano.
I gotta listen to that.
It's got a
I
ton
love
of
Kurt.
really.
I don't know that record.
Yeah, it's I think it's his fourth record.
Okay.
And then more current, if people aren't hip to Michael Mayo, he just put out this record called The Way.
Yeah. I just heard about this guy.
Dude, it is so good.
Yeah.
Like You and You, that tune, and 2020, which is not about 2020. It's like 2020 Vision. Came out a few years ago. But he just recently on YouTube. But yeah, that is a really killing record that has been taking a lot of my time. Maybe Jasmine Horn's Love and Liberation album as well. Yeah, man. We should talk more about
good ones.
About records.
Yeah.
And then the last question is always fun. It's that we all have gigs from hell where things go totally sideways. If you can recall a specific gig from hell, or maybe it's not from hell, but just like what's going on right now? Like what pops into your mind?
Oh, there's so many.
You can tell a couple if you want. Sometimes people got twofers.
There's been several with Pat that have been pretty torturous.
Okay.
Not his fault. I don't know if I can even tell any of these. There's some really bad ones. I will tell a funny gig story.
Hit me.
That this was after a particularly intoxicated performance.
Okay.
I won't mention. Well, it was Pat, and we'd been partying all day.
Okay.
All of us.
Oh man, all right.
And it was in Oklahoma, and the green room was there was just way too much booze in there.
Okay.
And it was like the end of a few day run. We were all ready to kind of just get after it a little bit.
Sure.
And so we all walked off the stage and we had cocktails in our hands, and someone set their drink down on, this might not be funny as I tell it, but in my memory it's hilarious. Someone set their drink down on like a stair railing walking down out in the back of the venue as we're outside, and there's like a parking lot behind the stairs, and Pat comes out and just goes wham and just knocks the drink right into the side of a car. And there's ice and it just makes this huge noise, and we're all kind of doing that, and then slowly the window just rolls down, and there's a dude just like looking at us, and we're just like, sorry. So it was really bad. It was really bad, but really a funny meltdown of a night.
Oh man, that is so funny, because there's that sobering moment where like it hits the car and everybody goes, ah, shit.
And everyone's laughing, and then it's just like the window. We're all like, oh.
What was the reaction of the guy?
Well, he was like the manager of the venue, so he was not stoked.
Yeah, worse.
Yeah, he was not stoked.
Worse. Oh man.
We haven't been back, and that was a few years ago. So, yeah, that was a pretty good one.
We'll send this to him. We'll send the story to him. And
Let's do
like,
that.
Look, man, like it made for a good story. We're so sorry. We were thinking a few years ahead of time, like that this would be funny later.
Yeah, there's definitely been some wedding disasters. I used to do lots of weddings, and there's been some total ceremony disasters. Where some like the string players like completely fall apart. That's a horrible feeling when you're up there playing ceremony music and it goes horribly wrong. I've definitely seen a bride throw up on the dance floor before.
Whoa.
Which was, there's weddings is a whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, we played this one wedding where it was just like, it was a perfect storm where, the one family was from England, the other family was Hawaii, and they were getting married in Corpus as a destination wedding, which doesn't quite make sense to me, but whatever, like that's fine. Do what you're gonna do.
Hawaii to Corpus.
It was a beautiful venue. So it was great. But they runaway groom for an hour and a half. Everyone's just sitting there waiting, and finally he comes, turned off his phone the whole bit, like nobody could reach him. He said, "Oh, groomsmen, go ahead," and so everybody went ahead, and then he just like disappeared, and the driver couldn't find him when they went back to go find him. And then she makes it through the ceremony, everything's all happy, and then the coordinator she was pretty chatty, more information than probably should be explained, and she goes, she can't stop throwing up. She can't stop throwing up. And then she comes down an hour later because everything's being pushed back like 3, 4, 5 hours, And then she goes, so she's pregnant, and she missed the whole wedding. Ooh. Yeah, the whole reception. So they were just like, I guess start playing and she'll make it down when she can. Yeah.
That's pretty
Weddings are a whole vibe, man.
Yes, that's a whole thing.
Well,
I just thought of another one that's really funny.
Hit me.
We played a private birthday party in Nebraska. And
great.
They open bar. I swear to this day I only had 2 drinks, which is basically just kind of the getting started for me.
Sure.
And I got the hiccups so bad, and I couldn't get rid of them for the whole gig. And I was like just kind of drunk enough.
Yeah.
I swear someone drugged me is what I'm getting at with this, because I was like, I browned out, and it was 2 drinks. And there's video of me holding my breath with my head back, just playing the piano, trying to get rid of my hiccups during the gig.
Well, it's like
there's another real low point.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of like pianists that like do this.
Yeah, it's like just one hand like playing an organ pad, like That's pretty bad. I tried not to repeat that one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Well, Sean, man, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you.
It.
Thank you for having me, Christian.
Course.
Yeah, pleasure.